All right, let's get started, I think. Um,
Sure.
all right, so hi everyone. Welcome to the 2022 Lean in Higher Education Conference. Thank you for attending today's session, which is Print Optimization at the University of Regina, which will be run as a learning session for 45 minutes. My name is Sally Cattell, and I'm one of the co-hosts for this session. Before we start, as the host of the University of Melbourne, I'd like to acknowledge the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander traditional owners of the unceded land on which we work and learn. We pay our respect to the elders past and present and the place of Indigenous knowledge in the Academy. I am on the land of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. Just some quick housekeeping items before we get started. Please stay on mute during the presentation. However, you're more than welcome to turn on your camera so that we can see you. And if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to put them in the chat or raise your hand. Please also note that the presentation is being recorded. And now let me introduce our presenter for this session. It's an honor to welcome Ray Konecsni for this wonderful session.
Thank you very much, Sally and May. I will go right into sharing my screen and we will get the show on the road. There we go. So I'm going to talk to you about it's a lean initiative. We didn't brand it as lean or process improvement, but it turned out to have a lot of flavor of enterprise business process management, process improvement, and change behavior management embedded in the project. And we definitely learned some lessons from this, and I'm going to try and share those with you today. So first, a little bit about myself. So I've got some formal training in business relationship management and project management, the IT infrastructure library. My change management training is in ProSize ADCAR. I've also taken Lean for IT, and where I've really got started in the process improvement arena was with a company called Tatham Process Engineering out of Toronto, Canada. Following that, I dabbled in enterprise business process management, and I currently serve on the steering committee for the Lean HE Americas chapter. And with Kimberly Snage, I'm the co-founder and co-lead for the Lean in Higher Education Canada chapter. So I've got 30 plus years experience in corporate service areas, including IT throughout my career. One of the credentials I didn't list here is I came from a large family, a little bit personal information I'm going to share with you. I'm the youngest of 8 children, and I've got accountants and teachers and mechanics and everything in my family. And believe it or not, I'm actually a trained muffler technician. But I decided to get into IT because the muffler business was too exhausting. Okay, that was a failed attempt at a dad joke, so I'm going to keep going. Some of the accomplishments and projects that I've tackled in my 30 plus years career stem back into the early 90s and continued on throughout my career. I've implemented on-demand printing, and we've done away with the corporate stock rooms, saving significant dollars, and that again required a lot of process rework and process mapping and changes of behaviors within our organization. We also implemented intelligent mail inserting for mailing out things like your benefit statements when you have an insurance company providing your dental and health coverage. Done some consolidation of technology departments, looked at outsourcing. I've done a number of print optimization initiatives. I was a project manager to look at alternate service delivery for an IT department within the government provincial registry, and we ended up outsourcing that initiative. And then once I moved on from that, I developed an enterprise business process management methodology for that organization to look at enterprise processes from a higher level. So I'll tell you a little bit about the University of Regina. We're a medium-sized university. We're typically an undergrad university in a liberal arts environment. We currently have about 16,500 undergrad students and 1,700 grad students. Of point to note here, our project started in 2010, and since then, our university has grown by over 20% with regards to the full-time equivalent staff count. We have 425 permanent faculty, 348 term academic staff, 814 permanent staff, and of course, a number of term and casual staff as well. We have 10 faculties comprised of 25 different academic departments. And in 2014, I believe we added our faculty of nursing. We also have 3 affiliated colleges, including the First Nations University of Canada. So we are situated on Treaty 4 and Treaty 6 lands. We have Luther College in Campion as well as being affiliated. And I'm going to skip all the technical jargon here, but our IT department is mostly centralized. There's not a lot of distributed IT going on the campus. So I'm going to get into the nuts and bolts of our project here. So how this started, when I first joined the university back in 2003, I was in the printing department. And we had a little bit of a mess going on. We had a number of older photocopiers that were ending their life cycle pretty much. We had a copies card system that was declining balance. So everybody had to pay for a balance on this card in order to use the copiers. That system was bought from the University of Chicago, used in 1980. So it was old and was being held together with chewing gum and paper clips and rubber bands and what have you. And we had an antiquated printer management system for keeping track of the prints that students made. I noticed, looking at some of the metrics, I quickly gathered our printing services department, which had responsibility for the copier fleet. The usage was down. It wasn't no longer a self-sustaining program. I looked at IS, and the paper consumption was going up like crazy. So there's definitely a problem there. The numbers were pointing to some lack of efficiencies in our area. So one of the other things, as I was a manager of printing, our purchasing department, rather than recommending everybody utilize the investment that the university made in our print services area, they demanded that we send any job that was valued at $2,000 or more out for tender. So we were losing a lot of internal money outside the organization because they thought they were saving the organization money. The money was leaving the organization rather than staying in the university. The other thing that was really weird is that the way the budget was being managed by some of the faculties and departments. So at the end of the year, if they had surplus funds in their budget, they would go out and buy 50 or 100 printers because they had the thought process that if they didn't spend all their budget, it would get taken away on them in the next year. So that was a little bit weird. So this is where things were at before the project. The copier fleet fell under the ancillary or under printing. There were really no control or management of desktop printers. The printing services department did some of the actual larger job printing, and we had a number of people going to the local copy center shop on the corner. So to get things started, to try and revisit that process, I needed to convince our senior leadership team, our vice president of administration, that we had a problem. My first attempt at doing that was met with some bitter sarcasm from the previous incumbent in the vice president admin role, where they told me if I think that they are going to confront a tenured professor over a $65 printer, I had another thing coming. So I kind of dropped it. We ended up getting a new vice president. I, again, dusted off my papers, and he agreed that we need to review the existing print environment. However, my point of view on that was just my opinion. And like any good university student, I needed to validate my opinion or my hypothesis. So we ended up hiring a consultant, again, because you have to create the desire for people to participate in things on a university. I only had half the campus wanting to participate in the review of our print environment. And those were the areas that reported to the vice president of administration. So anyways, we issued an RFP. We had 13 potential consultants respond. We shortlisted to 3. I was given direction from the executive that the consultant should not be affiliated with any manager or any manufacturer, such as Ricoh or Xerox or Canon or any of the major brands. And we needed to make a global view of print, not just the printer fleet, but it had encompassed all aspects of print. So we awarded the project to a company out of Calgary, Alberta in Canada here called Print Operations Group. So we asked them to find ways to improve end user satisfaction and productivity with our print devices and our print environment, identify and quantify any potential cost reduction opportunities. We also needed to develop a campus-wide print strategy to manage the enterprise level cost. So we needed them to review our current asset management program. Were we keeping our devices long enough, or should that be revisited? This was when sustainability was just gaining some traction. So we needed to assess our environmental impact of our current practice, and hopefully they could come back to us some opportunities for us to do better in that field as well. The IT people stuck their finger in the pie a little bit and said, could we document our current security processes around print and printing? We also asked them to benchmark to other universities in Canada and North America if possible, just so we understood what the best of the best were doing, and we could benchmark and measure towards that and give us a goal to aim for. And then, of course, with sustainability in mind, we asked them to identify any opportunities where we didn't need to print at all. And then, of course, generate a model target state. So the print group engaged with consulting. It took them about 4 months to get involved. They went around door to door to those actual areas that had volunteered. So keep in mind, this was just the administrative side of the house and not the academic side of the university. So they came back to us. They reported that we had no print strategy or governance or even a policy in place to manage print. We had a very limited support program for our devices out there. There was complete lack of any technology standards. It's like everybody bought whatever device they wanted to. So we lost any economy of scale with regards to our consumables, with regards to our support. We had almost as many print devices as we did faculty and staff. If you can see that number, 1.2 faculty and staff per device. Here are some scary results. Now, the cost of our environment, the cost to print, was over double the industry average. The industry standard was about 9 cents per page. We were pushing 20 cents per page when you factor all the costs in, such as the device cost, the toner, and the paper costs. We had no metrics or measurement for any green or sustainable objectives there. They also found out that 72% of the print that was being done on campus was being done by people with desktop printers. Most of those were inkjet printers, and 23% of overall print on campus was in color. So keeping in mind that at that time, it would cost between $1 and $2 per page for color printing. So our cost was extremely high. From an IT security perspective, there's no issues there. We also found out that our central printing department was expensive, so we needed to look at that. And we needed to realize that not one size fits all with regards to our print and our print devices. So a little bit of lean here. We had double the industry average of print devices per floor throughout campus. But the scary part, and when we talk about waste or wasted capacity, was we were doing a fifth of the industry average for volume. So it was just mind-blowing and very sobering statistics. So the recommendations from the vendor was that we needed to create an output strategy. We needed to look at an all-inclusive price per page pricing model and make the actual program self-sustaining so that it paid for itself and it wasn't a drain on any budget. We needed to standardize on our devices. We needed to centrally manage all aspects of print. If you're not managing it and measuring it, how do you know if you're getting better? So, and you can't really measure what you're not managing. So we needed to put that into place. We need to put some sort of a metrics program in place for measuring sustainability. We needed to revamp our central repro or our central printing department. And we also needed to step up our communications and awareness of the impact the current behaviors on campus were having not only to the environment, but to the university's finances as well. Any questions so far? Any comments anybody would like to make? Okay. So starting the project, I did sit down with my associate vice president at that time, and we mapped out our desired end state processes. So how would end users request a printer if they needed one? How would the workflow go? How would the billing and financial processes work, and so forth? So we mapped those out. I developed a business case and presented to senior leadership to go out and bring in another vendor to actually implement the recommendations from the print operations group. So what that involved is me doing I'm going to call it a dog and pony show, but I met with various groups on campus, the deans, other groups and committees, to try and increase the participation from the academic side of the house in the project, just to get some more economy of scale and make it a cost-saving initiative. So that met with, initially that met with very limited success. So we started putting some controls in place. We developed a couple policies about people restricting their ability to go out and buy printers willy-nilly, and then the 50 to 100 printer purchases at the end of the year. And then we also wanted to manage printing services. What we did with the Central Repro Department, we made them responsible for the acquisition or production of print throughout campus. They were the experts. They knew the industry standards, and they know what were the best ways to produce that job and design that job to save the university money and make best use of industry equipment. So we did decide on an all-inclusive cost per page structure for the distributed printer fleet. We wanted to be able to, I'm going to call it, we adopted a utility model where those areas that really didn't have enough volume to warrant having a device, the cost would be shared among the universities. So that was built into our pricing structure. We covered the cost for toner, the paper, the maintenance, the service, and the acquisition cost in the device and that cost per page. And then we needed to manage the support a little bit better. So if anybody had any issues, they would call our central IT support center or our help desk for requesting a new device, for ordering toner and paper, maintenance and service calls. And then if those requests or those incidents, trouble calls, whatever, required escalation from the outside vendor, we also automated the process to do that. So going forward, we purchased the RFP template from Print Operations Group that helped us, again, define what are the requirements we needed from our technology partner. We incorporated a vendor service level agreement. We shortlisted the responses that we received from that request for proposal down to 2. And we asked them to provide us with no more than 7 different models, so we really could get some economy of scale. What we then did was we gave the vendors 48 hours to set up a proof of concept in our test environment to make sure it would work before we invested the farm, so to speak, in them. And then we held an open house. We asked end users on campus to come and look at each solution that was proposed and provide us with their feedback. We wanted the end users to feel that they had a share or a say in the decision that was being made. To, again, part of the behavioral change management strategy that we had. And then we awarded the contract to Lexmark, the manufacturer, and they had partnered with a local vendor for service called WBM. So we negotiated a 5-year contract with that partnership. We worked with them to create the project plan. We developed a marketing plan to try and raise the awareness, build the desire and awareness for people to participate in the change. So we highlighted all the positives, what are the new features, the functionality, the capability. We really emphasized the environment and electrical savings that were coming from the project. We informed senior leadership of the potential benefits so they could walk the talk. At this point, I have to tell you that we still had very minimal participation from the academic side of the house. We only had 2 of the smallest faculties expressing interest to participate. So part of the metrics in outlining the potential benefits, the vice president of administration met with his boss, our president, who just happened to be developing the university's 5-year strategic plan. And one of her main objectives in that sustainability plan was sustainability. So using change behavior again, we really focused in and emphasized on the impact to the environment and sustainability that this program or this project would have on that. So she took it under her wing. She made our print optimization project her poster child and started promoting the benefits that would have to the environment. So needless to say, once she started promoting that, the academic areas, the deans began knocking on my door, and we were able to achieve full participation from the campus. We looked at some ways of automating the chargeback and tracking of print on campus because we still wanted to be able to understand how people were printing. So we ended up going to a product called PaperCut, ironically. Any questions so far?
Ray, we have one in the chat from May. You mentioned the change management strategy. Interested to hear from you what the main challenges were you faced during the project.
Sure, I'll speak to that.
Challenges.
Oh, we had lots. So I'll tell you a lot about them. Even though we did a frequently asked questions document, and I did that promotion through face-to-face meetings, we initially launched the project with the main benefit that we were touting was the cost savings to the university. That was met with serious opposition because the deans felt that that was another way for the center to claw back funding from the academic side of the house. So we quickly adopted to the sustainability where we got buy-in from the president. But apparently our behavior strategy or change strategy still wasn't strong enough. We had a contingency of professors and instructors organizing a protest because they felt that forcing them to participate in this program infringed on their academic freedom. So we had some challenges there to overcome. We did see a lot of success with the sustainability, but ultimately that ran its course as well. And then we switched to sitting down and doing those individual, I'm going to call it optimization meetings with the respective faculties and departments, and touting the benefit that each of those respective units would get from the program. And that seemed to, again, rejuvenate and create the desire. One of the important things here that I didn't talk about was we needed that executive buy-in. Even though we had the president promoting the project and the initiative, the vice president and provost of the academic really wasn't on board with it. It wasn't until that person retired and we got a new provost that the academic side also, while they said they were participating on paper, we just didn't have the momentum. So the new provost really took us under his wing and he pushed. And we achieved the targets that we were hoping for under his leadership, at least from the academic side of the house. May, did that answer your question?
Yes, sorry, I was just looking for the mute button. Yeah, that's great, thank you.
You're welcome. So what we did was we looked at each area on campus. We got copies of the current floor plan. We had an inventory of all the existing devices. We went door to door and interviewed the end users to determine what were their business needs, gathered what their print volumes were. So we understood their business needs. We weren't just going to willy-nilly grab printers and take them out of there. We wanted to understand the impact it had on their ability to service their students, their end users, and so forth. So we came up with that custom plan for each environment and each faculty and unit, what would meet their business needs. So then we sat down and reviewed those again with the vendor to make sure that they hadn't overbuilt. What we wanted to do was right size their devices to meet their actual printing needs. We didn't want to give them a jumbo jet when all they really needed was a moped to meet their printing needs, if I can use that analogy. So we did then, before we brought in new devices and removed their old, we made sure that the department was comfortable with the plan and got their sign off and their approval. So before the devices came on site, we did a site survey. We made sure that they had network and power to handle the new equipment that was going to be installed. We coordinated the orders so that it would arrive on time right after the network drop was installed. And if they had requested that we remove their old devices at the same time, it was, department by department and not an en masse initiative. We wanted to make sure that we took care and listened to our end users. One of the things we did was provide that project status report to our senior leadership every month. It was a very expanded project report card because it also showed how the impact we're having on the environment. Were we reducing power consumption? Were we reducing greenhouse gas emissions and so forth? So those were key metrics that we needed to communicate in order to continue with the buy-in. So once everything was deployed, this is kind of where we've arrived at our standardization now. We have 8 approved models that are supported. We've got a common user interface across all devices. So regardless of which machine you walk up to, you're not going to be learning everything from scratch. We came up with a one rate structure for faculty and staff across campus. The students unfortunately pay a little bit more than the faculty and staff do, but it's not unaffordable. The benefits that we started experiencing from the new technology included improved document confidentiality and security, definitely better quality of print. The devices, there was more uptime, there was less downtime. People weren't kicking a print device because it quit again. And we went from multi-function devices as opposed to single-use devices. We walked into some offices and they had a fax machine, they had a color inkjet printer, a black and white laser printer, and a scanner sitting on their desktop. So they had 4 devices where easily they could have shared one. So again, the correct capacity to meet their needs. We emphasized the less color printing because that was far more costly. The other thing was A4 devices, so 11 by 17 or tabloid. The amount of those sizes of documents that were being printed was very insignificant, about 1.3 of the total volume of print on campus. So the devices, smaller devices, were again more affordable than everybody having a big unit on campus. So we really saw the number of devices on campus drop significantly once we deployed. There was also increased functionality. We implemented print release so that people didn't have to worry about running down the hall to their device 5, 6, 7 times a day. It was pretty easy. They could just walk up with an actual RFID or a proximity card and authenticate to the device. That met the IT security needs. They could then release their print, or they could copy or scan or fax or whatever they needed to from the device. What we did for students, because students were using the declining balance card, they would have to go out and prepay for their printing and copying, and the student utilization was very, very low. So what we had them do was build a system that the paper cut application actually was able to track student billing and bill them monthly to their student account. So they didn't have to worry about having cash on hand or finding a copy card to print out their assignment. It was relatively easy for them. They could, get their bill for however much print they used throughout the semester. And you may ask, well, how did we enforce collection? What we ended up doing was with the registrar's office, if they didn't have a zero balance on their student account, they weren't allowed to complicate. So, but that never has been a problem. We've always had students keeping up with paying their accounts. We also created a prepaid card system for the general public to come in and use our print environment as well if they needed to. I mentioned again the increased functionality of the new infrastructure. So our software that we've implemented in the background, people don't have to worry about calling and saying I'm out of toner anymore. We've implemented a system where it knows that your device is reaching a certain threshold for amount of toner left. It will go ahead and automatically order that for you. We also, PaperCut monitors utilization by device, by department, or person. So I can generate a report to see who is the biggest user of color print, or who printed the most on campus, which department printed the most, which device is most utilized, and share that with the respective department to, again, help us manage the volumes of print being done. One of the things we found out was the average university sector consumption per employee per year for printing was about 8,500 pages. We were able to reduce our volumes down to about 3,600 pages per year per employee. So significant improvement. What we've done though is we've continued to implement metrics programs. We needed to manage the volumes, the vendor performance, and report on that and use that data to our advantage. As I mentioned, U of R strategic plan included sustainability. We emphasized that the older devices consume more power. It was equivalent to leaving the oven on, or leaving a curling iron or an iron plugged in when those devices sat there being even not being used. So it was consuming power and drawing on our electricity. There was a lot of wasted paper, and we found that about 15% of the print jobs that are printed were never actually picked up off the printers. So we needed to address that issue as well from a sustainability perspective. Here are some of the metrics that we did. So prior to optimization, we hit about 1,200 devices on campus. So after the first go around, after the first 5-year contract, we were able to pare that back to 395 devices. Currently, we're at 231 devices. So the continuous improvement, or the desire to continually do better, has been ingrained into our end user community, because now it's not so much IT encouraging them to reduce, they're doing it on their own fruition. We still have a few people that are holdout that have hidden a personal printer in their desk drawer so that they think we don't know it's there. So, you know, will we ever get those? I don't know. As I mentioned, we're supporting 8 models instead of 173. And I also spoke to the fact that even though our device count went down, our print volumes went down, our university grew significantly in size. Print optimization gave us a goal, some goals or targets that we should aim towards with regards to that printer to person ratio or person to printer ratio. They said we should get down to 3.3. The industry average sector is about 3.0 people per device. We're currently at about 5.8 people per device. Just to reduce the power consumption, when I talked about the devices being left on, we were able to show a 9.6% reduction in electricity consumption over the first 5 years of the contract. Some of the other impacts we had in the environment, we reduced our CO2 emissions over the first 5 years by 40%. So how that was achieved was in a number of fashions. It was through the reduction in the electricity consumption. It was a reduction in landfill waste contributions. So I mentioned here that the toner costs were $520,000 per year previously. A lot of that was, you know, your typical toner cartridges, and most people weren't recycling those. They were all going to the landfill. So that's where that significant reduction came from. The environment was expensive. Before we started, $910,000 per year to replace the device and the maintenance and toner and so forth. After the first 5 years of the contract, we had that cost down to $472,000, which is a pretty good step in the right direction. What we also saw, we encouraged people to decrease their paper consumption by printing duplex or two-sided. So that decreased paper consumption by about 21% across campus. And we also, with our efforts to change the behaviors about printing things in color, people were printing their emails in color, for crying out loud. So we were able to change that behavior as well and get them down to color makes up about 8.7% of our total print volumes on campus. The next few slides I have are some of the things we needed to do. Part of our change behavior strategy was we needed to use terminology that people understood and that they could relate to. So for example, it took 5.5 million glasses of fresh water each year to produce the paper used on uncollected print and copy jobs at the University of Regina. So I'm going to put that a little bit more. It takes about a can of Foster beer, the equivalent of water, to manufacture one piece of virgin bond paper. We use Tim Hortons as our analogy here in Canada because people understand the Tim Hortons. So hopefully everybody in Australia still drinks Foster. So that was one of the messages that we said. We also wanted to put it into terms of how much of an impact they're having, the paper consumption was having on our forests. So for example, if the university planted 5,000 trees, it would take those 5,000 trees 10 years to offset the carbon dioxide produced annually by our print devices at the U of R. That one seemed to get a lot of traction as well. And then even our electricity consumption, by optimizing our print environment, we could save X number of kilowatt hours or the equivalent to power 17 homes in Saskatchewan for 1 year. So let me speak to Saskatchewan a little bit for you. So our temperatures aren't moderate and they fluctuate throughout the year. So typically in January, we experience a week or two of minus 40 degrees Celsius winter. And in summer, it goes to the other end of the scale. We can have plus 35 Celsius. So not only are our furnaces consuming electricity, our air conditioners are really consuming it in the summertime as well. So quite a broad range of temperatures here in the province. So our efforts resulted in centralization of all print. So this is where the enterprise business process management comes into play. Rather than having 4 different areas being responsible for that enterprise function, it now all falls under information services. So the printing services department, along with the print that was previously being purchased externally, our printer fleet, which is now consolidated with a multifunction device fleet, and so forth. So we're now measuring and managing that process and understanding the impact it's having at the university. So after the first 5-year contract, we entered what was phase 2. We partnered with our sister university to increase our buying power. So we joined contracts. We also had, in phase 2, we had actual data from our systems that we implemented, and we were further able to right-size the number of devices, not only the quantity of devices, but the capacity of the respective devices. And between those two factors, we were able to reduce our lease costs by about $482,000 additional dollars over 5 years. Now, just updating you a little bit, throughout the pandemic, or just as the pandemic was starting, we were in the process of renewing that contract with the University of Saskatchewan and right-sizing our fleet. So we've been able to knock our total cost to print down to $195,500 per year. And our price per page is now at 6 cents, whereas previously we were touching on 20 cents per page. So again, a tremendous cost savings to the university. We did a governance process with our vendor, and they looked at our first 2 contracts and the total amount of dollars saved by the university. And they informed us that if we would have continued on the path of before optimization, we would have spent about $4.6 million more than we did. So in other words, the print optimization program saved the university about $4.6 million over the course of those first 2 5-year contracts. So we're continuing to push for device count reduction across campus. The pandemic really accelerated that. And just before the pandemic hit, we implemented a document management program using a product by a company called Knowledge Web. So a lot more digital workflows. And a lot less printing being done by those areas. As a matter of fact, some of those areas that we've implemented the document management have removed their printers and replaced them with just scanners because they don't do any more printing at all. So what's next on our plan? Our goal is to continue with the device count reduction and continue to foster that continuous improvement philosophy. Place that emphasis on electronic workflows. We do have a couple more in place here that are just about to kick off. An electronic signature. One of the things that we didn't have before was electronic travel expense reconciliation. So that's coming down the pipe. A student relationship management program and a university collaboration platform, again, are all steps we're going to be taking to move towards a greener environment. We also want to, for whatever hardware we do have left, we want to continue to expand our collaboration with other higher ed institutions in the province to continue to maximize that buying power. And of course, we want to continually measure and look for opportunities for improvement in all areas. What were things that we learned here? I've got a whole bunch of them. So project management, while it seems that the project was very successful, throughout the start, we had a lot of issues to deal with. We initially, when we went to RFP, we wanted the vendor to do the project management on this. However, as things progressed, the vendor withdrew their project management, and that fell onto our laps to do. And there was a couple of us trying to do it off the side of our desks. Our project management office didn't have the capacity to take it on. So we ended up dealing with some scope creep. We had a lot of communication issues. As I mentioned, the change issues were a constant way to deal with. The original RFP, including having the vendor as the project manager, and as I mentioned, they backed away. And they were eventually able to bring some sort of a project manager on board, but it was only for their aspects. So we had to partner with them seriously. Some of the things that we also learned was to engage our stakeholders or our campus community a lot earlier in future projects and future even process initiatives. We needed more end user representation. We needed more representation from faculty, staff, and all over the campus because it seemed when you went in one direction that pleased one area, there was opposition from another. What we should have done, while we did map out our in-state processes, we neglected to engage our stakeholders in that mapping. It was just done internal to IS with the assistance from our vendors. So in hindsight, we should have brought in those end users to help us with the process mapping at the start. The other thing we really didn't have that good of a handle on was the change management plan or strategy. we should have had a contingency plan in place because we scrambled when we started facing some of those roadblocks, and we were losing momentum.
Just letting you know, Ray, we've got 5 minutes.
5 minutes, great. I'm down to my last few slides. So we should have also, under the steering committee, we realized from a technology perspective, we should have retained some of that knowledge internally. The administrative software was something we should have, again, been more consistent with and stayed. I'm going to use the analogy, we wanted one throat to choke. That's why we initially asked for the vendor to provide the entire suite of hardware and software. And that got us into issues down the path, was the conflicts between the hardware and the software. We should have relied on our communications department. We should have created some more benefit statements early on. We should have benchmarked as well. Those were some of the things that we really needed to do. And starting that change management behavior, we didn't do that soon enough. We should have started that right from the get-go. We did measure customer satisfaction throughout the program or the project, but we didn't do that up front. Also, one thing we underestimated was people's attachment to their print devices. It was like taking away a puppy from them almost. We had a lot of opposition when it came time to removing those devices. So just some quick acknowledgements. I want to free up some time for more questions. As mentioned, we had sponsorship right from the top. Eventually, that helped. We had a strong project team with mostly the IT representatives. The project team should have had some representation from the faculties in Unison campus. Now, the project, part of what we needed to do was build the credibility of the project, because regardless of the amount of expertise that we employed in here, we were still facing skepticism on this project. So the project was nominated for a lot of different awards. We were runner-up. We won a few. We were the subject of a number of white papers and articles in different magazines and white papers from different various industries, including some leading industry publications. We've been asked to present at numerous conferences. One of the key ones here was UNESCO's Sustainable Development Goal Policy conference that was actually hosted in Regina here. So I presented on that. It's about responsible consumption and production, and that was in 2019. So that was one of the landmark conferences that I presented at. And it's gained recognition pretty much worldwide. We've been approached by the University College in London, England, Fort Worth, Dallas, you name it, to pretty much we've been asked about our project. So with that ends my presentation. Do we have time for questions now?
We do. There is a lot of comments in the chat about how great this project is. It's so lovely to hear how user-centric it is for such a techie project. The benefit realization is incredible. Julie said, I was working in the procurement team when we rolled out a similar program. Having the ability to print in any building on campus without having to connect to a standalone printer was like magic, although the academics were not impressed with all of the standalone printers when they were all removed.
Exactly.
We have a question from Catherine. Such impressive benefit realization. Are you sharing this with your user community? And if so, how? Any advice to communicating benefits?
We are communicating it not broadly to our end user community, but to the respective departments that are seeing positive results from. So one of our extension division, for example, we originally recommended that they put 21 devices in. That was their goal for them to achieve. And through the course of time, they've knocked that goal out of the water. They're currently sitting at 6 devices. Their location has about 130 faculty and staff in it. So kudos to them. We continue, actually what we've done is taken a success story from them and actually had their faculty administrator share and give some testimonials about the project and how they've used it to reduce their expenses and improve their work processes in their respective area.
Thanks, Ray. There was another question from Tom, interested in the open house for your open house for your feedback, did this uncover any ideas or concepts that hadn't been considered or were useful going forward?
It did uncover some. What we did was we came up with an evaluation chart. What did they like about the device? Did they like the user interface? Were they satisfied with the quality? Some of those aspects. We did have some areas, actually, our initial authentication plan was to have users utilize the keyboard on the device to authenticate to the device from an IT perspective and to track the printing. So we had one of the people that went through in the, if I'm going to call it the open house, suggest we incorporate a technology like a magstripe card or a proximity card or something of that nature. And so credit to that end user, that's how we implemented that, further streamlining and making it a lot easier for people to identify themselves to that device.
Thanks, Ray. Ling has also asked, is ancillary printing part of the project?
Yes, it is. So let me talk about the ancillary printing. So printing services, our central repro shop, was a full ancillary that reported into our IT department. When we looked at the revenue sources there, not all the revenue was coming from ancillary sources. So when I say ancillary sources, those units that aren't centrally funded. For example, the administrative units were the big consumers, the faculties were the big consumers. So when we looked at ancillary, that would be coming out of my pocket or student pockets. So we were able to split the budget and track the revenues and expenses separately. And right now, the ancillary contribution to the overall revenue picture for the central printing shop, they contribute about 40%. And we brought a lot of alumni back utilizing our service on campus. So it's done wonders for increasing traffic on campus and getting people supporting their alma mater. So.
Thanks, Ray. I have a question as well. Have you seen a similar kind of spark for other improvement initiatives off the back of this one?
As a matter of fact, I think we have as I mentioned, the document management one spread like wildfire, and mercifully, responsibility for project management doesn't fall under me. The project management office took ownership of that because it is an enterprise project that touches all units on campus. I was trying to use that argument to get them to take over the project management for print optimization, and I guess I wasn't assertive enough.
No worries. Thanks, Ray. We have gone slightly over time, but I think that's okay. It was very valuable session. So I'd just like to thank yourself as well as everyone who attended today. This brings us to the end of our session, and we hope to see you at the other conference sessions for the remainder.